Okay. We're going to open up our Sfarim. We are on page. Okay, we're on page 244. Okay. We're on page 244. And the Bezat Hashem, the Shir is the Refuat Shlema, Mazal Bat Niza. And also the Harz B'chaim L'chaim for the Nishmat of Rachel Bat Rivka. All right. So we're middle of the topic of Maaseh Shabbat. Just for our topic today. Now, we did a review somewhat last week. We're not going to do a complete review unless we have time towards the end, but just so we can pick up where we're holding. So let's go back into our books to the chart of page 227. Okay? Maaseh Shabbat is somebody who did a malacha on Shabbat. So there's intentional and there's unintentional. B'mezid or b'shogeg. We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Rabbi Yehuda in the Gemara, that's the way the Rambam says the halacha is. Yeah. So if it's intentional, he did it on purpose, meaning he knew it was Shabbat, he knew it was a malacha, and he anyway did it, then for the person himself, it's forbidden forever. Le'olam, asur. So let's say here's the case. Beryl went ahead and cooked this food on Shabbat. He knew it was Shabbat. He knew it was asur to cook, and he cooked the food on Shabbat. It remains asur lo le'olam. For him, forever, he's not allowed to use it. For everybody else, they're allowed to have it after Shabbat. And we saw this means you don't even have to wait. The whole bichdei shi'asu, waiting until after it was done, that's only for the goy, they said, but not for a Jew. Now, if it was shogeg, when we saw, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbat because they don't want you to have hana from a maaseh that was done on Shabbat. But after Shabbat, even that guy can enjoy it. Okay, that's what we have to. That's what we have to know to continue our sugya today. Asur lo le'olam. It's asur for him forever. The guy who did it himself. It's asur for him forever. If he did it intentionally, he knew it was Shabbos, he knew the malacha was asur, he went there and he did it anyway.
I'm sorry, why if a boy does something, they should not be asur if it's knas?
Right. So
if a Jew does it intentionally,
there's no b'shtei shi'asu.
For others.
Because
the reason is because we saw that it was a gezerah that we put a knas because it's easy to tell a guy to do something. So in order for you not to get used to tell a guy to do something, we say b'chtei shi'asu. So you didn't really gain anything because you told him to do on Shabbat, but you couldn't use it anyway until after Shabbat. You don't usually tell a Jew go ahead and do malacha. So there is no b'chtei shi'asu there.
The guy is not mitzvah and the Jewish is mitzvah.
Right, but the whole thing is b'chtei shi'asu does what? Whatever he did for me on Shabbat, I don't get to gain from it until after the time it takes. Right. So I really didn't gain anything from it. Right. So that din, that halacha, that gezerah is only by a guy because it's easy for a person to tell a guy do something because, like you said, we don't think he has Shabbat, so we tell him. Yeah. Therefore, the gezerah is by a guy. By a Jew, we say we don't usually tell a Jew do something. So therefore, there's no b'chtei shi'asu over there.
But if you made a mistake, so b'chtei shi'asu.
When? For who?
For a Jew.
If a Jew did something,
yeah,
we say no b'chtei shi'asu by a Jew. No b'chtei shi'asu.
No, achre Shabbat.
Miyad. No b'chtei shi'asu. Unless you say that this guy, if he's a chiloni, right, and you say that he is what's it called a mumar, and if he's a mumar avodah zarah, we consider him a nachri, and if he's a nachri, then you have b'chtei shi'asu. So even if he's a Jew, but you classify him as a mumar avodah zarah, and you say he's b'chtei shi'asu.
So, but by him there is no b'shogeg.
Right.
If you call him a mumar,
right? But even by mezid, for someone else, you can use miyat. So, but here we're saying he's a mumar, so it's for him. It's going to be what's it called? Okay, and that's really where we're picking up today.
Right.
This is where we're picking up today. Right. The issue is as follows. Let's look at your idea for a moment and see how we bring it over to Shabbat. There is a halacha in the hilchot of ta'aruvot, okay, of mixtures. We know regularly if something fell into a pot of soup. So something terefa, something asur fell into a pot of soup. If you have 60 times amount of what fell in, we have bitul, right? It becomes batul. And bitul is actually a principle of the Torah, the Oraita principle. And so much so, the Pitrei Tshuva said, if someone doesn't believe in bitul, he's a napikaris. Bitul is a true concept, right? 60 times the amount, it becomes nullified. Now, what happens is as follows. The Isser fell inside the pot. Okay? Isser fell inside the pot. It's not 60 times. The kosher item is not 60 times. It's 50. Okay? And then I decided I want to make it 60 times. So I'm going to throw in more kosher items to help nullify it. Right. So the halacha is, ein mevatel isser lechatchila. You're not allowed to go and make it, adding to it in order for it to be bittul. You can't do that. What happens if a guy does that? What happens if a guy does that?
Does he know?
He knows.
Which page?
On page 244. And he was mevatel isser. It fell in, and he mevatel it. It was 50 times, and he put it to make it 60 times. So listen to the Rashba said. Look at the Bet Yosef. Bet Yosef is quoting from the Rashba. It's dafka the person who went ahead and added it to make it bittul, in order to make it 60 times more. And the Rashba adds on, not just the person who did it, also for the guy who they did the bittul for. Meaning, I wanted someone else to eat. So I wanted to make it kosher for him. So I added in more kosher items to make it bittul, not for myself, but for the other guy also. Okay? Okay? So this Rashba says that if I did something usher, it's not only usher for me, it's usher for the one that I also did it for.
It's not Shabbat.
Hold on. Okay, you're right. It's not Shabbat right now. Talking about your day. Talking about Hilchos Taruva. It's fine. The kivin the time of the kanasa kadesh lo yehanu lo ma'asav haraim vayavol aso kampam macheres im atam matiru lemish netvatel b'shviloi iklemecha shema yase kampam macheres. If you're not going to make this kanas, right, then this guy's going to go ahead and do it another time later. One second. Usually a person doesn't sin for somebody else. He sins for himself. Right? What are you talking about over here? Maybe the shani hacha. Why? The ika is milsa. People are not going to think there's actually an isser over here. Why? What do you mean there's an isser? I'm adding more stuff and I'm making it kosher. There's no real isser here. You're just not letting me do it. I'm watering it down. I'm not doing anything really wrong. Hilka chashina. Therefore, we're choshesh. Nami the shared lemishin etvatel b'shvilo chashin and dilma ot lememer legoy or leavid shibatilenu hilkach kenisim. Therefore, we make a knas because you can tell, it's not so bad. I'll tell someone else to do it. And at the end of the day, the main point we want to get over here is what the Rashba does with regarding the person. The real isser is the person who is mivatel in isser. It's asur law. It's really asur for him. But the Rashba said, not just him, but also for the person that he did it for. Okay. Now going back to Hilchot Shabbat. Hilchot Shabbat said, if the guy did it b'mezid, right? It's asur law le'olam. It's asur for him forever. Do we apply this Rashba and say lo le'olam for him means not just him, but means also the person that he made it for? Okay, the case on Shabbat. The guy cooked b'mezid on Shabbat, but he didn't cook it for himself. He cooked it for the other guy.
Strangers, then it's okay for them.
Yeah,
But if
for someone that he cooked it for.
Yeah, but the
Right?
halacha is if the person he cooked it for, then is mutar mutar kadesh asu, no?
We usually say asor lo leolam la'acher miyad b'motzei Shabbat.
Right, that's
So
what I
the
mean.
question is, can we define lo him, expand that definition, and say that's also for anybody that he cooks it for?
Right.
So we see that the Rashba does it by the Hilchos Ta'aruvos, right? In mixtures. The Rashba does it in Yeridea. Can we extrapolate that and bring that now to Hilchot Shabbat? That's
the guy cooks egg on Shabbat, his wife.
cooks it for a Jew, from a Jew.
She's a religious Jew.
Very good. Is she part of that Asur Lo Le'olam? So let's take a look. Says the Magen Abraham. Source 30. Narrowly, Dilmishin Itvashel B'Shvilo, who gam kain dino k'mohu atzmoi. If someone cooked for someone else on Shabbat, it's like he himself. K'moshe katuba Yeridea. The Hatam Nami Tam Mishum Knasa. He says the Magen Abraham, I think, yeah. Asr Loila Olam doesn't just mean the guy who himself did it, but the guy who he did it for also. And that's the Knas. Then he says, Mihu Midiver Harav Beit Yosef, Shal Mashma, Dafka Hasam Chashin and Shermel Akam Lebatloi, Avahacha, Havalav Hachi Tzarech Limaten Bichteshi Asu, if it was a guy. So there already is another Knas by the guy. By Shabbos, you have to wait Bichteshi Asu. So maybe you don't have to make another Knas to add on the person that they did it for. But you never have it where a Jew will do it for another Jew, so we're not really worried about that because the person doesn't do a sin without it. So it says the Magen Abraham, maybe you don't have to add another person to it because you have a knas here. If a guy did it, it's b'chtei shi'asu. So you don't need to add this knas of adding someone else in. And usually Jews don't do it for somebody else, so you don't have to add on this knas like by bittul. People are more like, what did I really do? I just added something to it to make it more kosher. I didn't really do something wrong. But Shabbos, no one's going to go ahead and do something on Shabbos for someone else. So therefore, it says, maybe you don't have to say, lo, him means everybody that he cooks it for as well. So he wants to limit it. Although he says in the beginning, I think it should expand. The question is, and by the way, Mishnah Berurah says the same thing. Mutter l'motzei Shabbos miyad, va'afilu l'mi shenitvashel b'shvilo. Even if the guy that he cooked it for. So asur lo olam means dafka the guy who did it, and not someone who he's cooking for. Right. The question the Ketav Sofer, the son of the Hatam Sofer, dealt with, he says as follows. He says, one second. First of all, the Metzias changed today. In what sense? In the sense that today, a non-religious Jew doesn't mind and actually wants to cook food for someone else. Right? Nowadays, these Ein Adam Chotev Lo doesn't really exist. The guy doesn't really have to do it just for himself to be choteh. He does it. He's doing it all the time. There's no more. And Adam choteh l'lo. He doesn't care his own benefit. He's just cooking away. So that doesn't really exist anymore to say that reason, says the Ketav Sofer. Plus, he wants to say, this guy is doing it for you. The guy who has his restaurant, the Jewish guy has his kosher, he has his restaurant, right? He has his hotel. He wants people to come and eat to him. So he's making it dafka for you. So you have fresh food. He's always doing it. They want fresh food that day. Says the Ketav Sofer, we have to add on to the Knas. That's not just the guy who did it, but for everybody he did it for. Why? Because he's doing it. B'kvias, he's always doing it. That's what he's doing.
And they're waiting for
That's
it.
his parnasah.
And they're waiting
They
for
want to have it. They want to have fresh food. So he writes over here. Even though people are not likely to refrain as they're eating the food, we have to. The hu adin lemishit vashel b'shvilo b'datov v'latzono kvidaro shalenu. The shaykh sheitzav eloi b'pam acheres. The chal of knas chachamim kein nereli pashut. Says the Chatam Sofer, it is pashut to him that what? Asur lo leolam doesn't mean just for the guy himself. The guy is doing it b'kfiyas, and for parnasa, it includes who is also doing it. Says even further. Even if he's cooking it for not for the person who wants it, not with the ratzoin. He says you cannot eat that food because that food was made dafka for others to eat. Right? And he says it's the same thing like we saw in Yeridea. It's that you're selling it, you're making money off it. And so, says the Ketar Sofer, we have to expand what it means, Asur Lo Le'olam. Not just him, but anyone that he's making it for. Says the Yalkut Yosef. Let's take a look.
Well, how can you have that authority to decide what? I guess they say
You're adding on to the Knas.
You can't say, "Oh, this is my time and that's my time." It's not something that.
So very good. That's the hard tzvi in the next section, in the next piece, right after the Yalkut Yosef. That's what sees Pasach Frank, and he's basically going to say, like you said, you can't make an extra knas. The Chum didn't say that knas. What are you coming in and knasing more? But let's take a look at the Yalkut Yosef because l'alacha l'maisa, that's what we're going to go with. Chiloini mumar l'chal Shabbos befar hesya she'aver v'osam malacha asura min atayir b'Shabbos l'tzarech ha'cherim b'mezid. Im asa came b'oifen arai. Okay, if he just did it once, he just did it. V'loy b'kviyas b'chol Shabbos mutar la'cherim l'hanoisim l'achtav v'mot Shabbos miyad. Ve'in tzorech la'amtin michdei she'asu. Ubifrat im adavar naseh b'nigud l'rotzoinav, especially if they didn't want it. Avol im oisa came b'oifen kavua. But if this chiloini mumar l'chal Shabbos var hesya does it on a kaviyah standard, he's always doing it. Kigoin bal misado beit malon hamavshil b'kviyas l'tzarich acherim b'Shabbos b'mezid osur gam la'acherim lahanois me'oisa tabshul le'olam. It's forbidden forever. Af im loy tziva oto levashel b'shvilo b'Shabbos. Even if I didn't ask him to do it. The kivon shu also came to mezid b'kviyas. Yesh lo asur b'zeh kemol levashel atzmo. It's considered atzmo. It's as if you did it because he's doing it for you, and therefore it's asur leolam. It's asur for him for olam. It's asur for you for olam because he's doing it for you. That's the halacha l'maaseh the way Yalkut Yosef brings it. Okay, so that's halacha l'maaseh. Now, Rami said a very good question. Rami said that's not the gzeira. The gzeira was, it's also loy for the guy who did it, not expanding loy to mean others. So let's take a look at the Har Tzvi. So the Har Tzvi, of Tzvi Pasach Frank, and he says, Havliya is dicey. He says, to my knowledge, my lack of knowledge, which means a lot, yesh lo dam midvara. The fil dvara the haygavna shaykh gzera mikol malkum soif mitchila lo gazru chazal be Yisrael mishum de lo shricha. V'imken yesh leimer de meil lo naser b'chi haygav. Says Tzvi Pasach Frank, I don't know where you're getting this gzera to add it to others, even though what you're saying makes sense. It makes sense.
But he says
But
mishum lo shricha. But today is shricha.
I hear you, but he's still saying soif mitchila lo gazru chazal.
Yeah.
Then they didn't geyser it then mishum lo shricha. But in the end of the day, it's still not the gzera.
All door v'dorshav. Every door has his.
Well, then he says
own
further.
posek.
Look, he says further. But oidim divrei priyam megadim, which was what the Magen Abraham brought down. The nistapik yesh ligzar b'mumar k'kdei she'asu mashma al kolpanim loyna asur aloymis k'moshe asu v'lacha b'atzmoi. Right. The Pri Megadim says maybe by mumar you have to do b'kdei she'asu. They never said completely lo'ilam. So the Tzvi Pasach Frank did not want to see, seems not to want to expand the lo, and definitely not lo'ilam, maybe b'chdei she'asu, okay? But l'alocha l'maisa, again, the Yalkut Yosef says it's lo'ilam, and loy is expanded to include for the person that he made it for.
It must be because look, today all the hechsherim what they give, if there is a company, they make their food in Shabbat and in kosher. They say it's kosher. We make it in Shabbat. And then for who they make it for other Jews. So if you go and come say, okay, after Shabbat is mutar, yeah, sure, for sure, they're gonna sell it after Shabbat. So it's gonna be how it's gonna work.
Exactly. There's no way to prevent it.
Exactly.
Right. You're letting them go.
Yes.
Right.
So today, because it's on those days was no shachiach, somebody gonna make for somebody else, bemezid in Shabbat, all this. But today they're making it anyway.
I hear.
This is how they make money.
I agree. That's halacha l'maaseh. You're right. Okay. The Orchot Shabbat. He says. Yisrael mumash also malacha b'Shabbos avor acherim. Kigoyin shekatav peres yirakos amanas l'moichel l'machar. Yesh la'asa al acherim le'ishtamish v'lachtoi olamis machmash shnei tamim. He says you have to make it forbidden forever, right? Because why? Yesh ma poiskim serve the kivin should also the malacha amanas shehenu ba'acherim also chazal acherim le'ishtamish ba'loilam shem also mechal Shabbos atzmoi le'ishtamish malacha loilam. That's what we saw. The law gets expanded. He's doing it for you. He says some achrayim say what? No, it's not right. Some say no, it's not asul. It's just kadesh asu when he does it for someone else. And then the second thing he says, if one who desecrates Shabbat performed the malacha in order to sell the products, then it becomes asul olam. This is because the Chazal decree that a habitual Shabbat desecration not profit from malacha perform a Shabbat. Like Rabbi Chaim said, if you're going to let him do it, then he's going to make money from it always. You're never going to encourage him to stop.
This is bad. You read bad is exactly what it is.
Yep. So we saw again. We're going to read now outside the Tzurba for a moment in the Halakha Joseph English edition, and it's going to make it very clear over here. If a non-observant Jew performs melacha on Shabbat for other Jews on a regular basis, such as one who cooks in a restaurant or in a hotel every Shabbat for its clients, it's forbidden for anyone to eat ever the food he cooked on Shabbat, since he desecrates Shabbat mezid for the sake of others on a regular basis, even if they did not ask him to do so. It's forbidden to all others forever, just as forbidden to the person who actually cooked it. So, according to Yalkut Yosef, law is extended to the person who he did it for, and it's asur le'olam, not just for Chodesh Yom.
What is it considered?
Asur. Asur.
It's not treif.
Asur. It's treif. It's asur to eat. It's treif. It's treif.
Probably not.
Probably
knows, but hashkach is probably not good such good hashkach.
So he has here a case. I was going to look at it later, but we're going to take a look at it now. He says over here, if a Jew operates a bakery and they bake goods on both weekdays and Shabbat, it is most proper for a God-fearing Jew to refrain from ever purchasing baked goods from the bakery, especially if you can make a boycott and a protest, and this way they'll stop. Technically, however, let's say someone walks into the store and it's Sunday, and sitting on the shelf is bread. Okay, can I buy it and eat it?
Technically, you can buy because you don't know when he made it.
If you have a suffix and you don't know when he made it, right? If you don't know when he made it, then you can take it.
Right, there are many bakeries early, especially in Israel.
If one is certain that the bread was baked on Shabbat, then it's forbidden to eat that bread. It becomes asur, that bread. Since the bakery does this on a regular basis, it's equal to someone eating food he cooked on Shabbat for himself.
You're saying even in the middle of the week you shouldn't because you want to make a protest like that.
Right. He said if you can protest this way, this way they'll stop baking on Shabbat. Fine. But he says technically, mikar adin. If I walk into the store and I want bread, and this bread is sitting, and I'm there on a Sunday, Monday, I don't know when this bread is baked. If there's a suffix, it could have been baked before or after Shabbat, then you'd be mutter to buy, as long as the suffix exists. Okay, fine. That is on the expansion of lo, of who is who. Okay, now comes another concept in Maaseh Shabbat. Now, we kept saying Maaseh Shabbat, an act that was done on Shabbat. The Chai Adam has a big chidush here. He says Maaseh Shabbat means that my action on Shabbat did something to that item. It changed that item. When I cooked, I took raw food and I made it to something. That's Maaseh Shabbat. I transformed it. Very good. But what happens if I didn't transform it and I did a malacha, right? In Masechah Shabbat, we know of a malacha gerua, right? It's a low malacha. What's that? Hotza'ah. Taking something out from one rishus to the other rishus. So the guy take a box of cookies. He took it from one rishut to another rishut on Shabbat. Did anything actually happen to those cookies?
No.
The same bags of cookies.
Yeah.
The malacha was not on the cookies.
On the person. It's on the person.
So, is that considered Maaseh Shabbat? And I can't use it on Shabbat?
Maybe.
Right? Because according to Yehuda, even B'Shogeg, I can't use it to wait till after Shabbat. And if it's amazing, I just can't use it forever, but everyone else can use it after Shabbat. Is that the same thing? The Chai Adam wants to say no. Maaseh Shabbat means that the item that I'm dealing with had a result into a transformation on it. But if I did a malacha with it, but not to it, then it's not going to be Maaseh Shabbat to that degree. So let's take a look at the Chai Adam. Chai Adam, we're on page 250, source 36. Says the Chai Adam. V'davka b'davar shnaseh maaseh b'guf hadavar shenishtaneh when he did something that changed it from what originally was. But if he took it from one rishut to another rishut, it did not change from what it was. He did it on Shabbos. Right? Usually Rabbi Yehuda says, you did a malacha, no one can use it on Shabbat. Says the Chai Adam, if you did the malacha, but you didn't do it to the item itself, and you did it b'shogeg, you can use that. So technically, if the guy brought these cookies, and he brought it to the shul for a kiddush, and it's coming from one rishut to another rishut, he did it, it's a tchum, I don't know what he did. Yeah, and he drove a truck, so the truck is malacha, is the Shabbos, it's a fire, it's stuff going on in there. But the cookie's nothing, and he brought it in. According to the Chai Adam, if he did it b'shogeg, mutar feel like feel b'yod. The imba mezid, asur feel lachem ad motzei Shabbos miyad. Until motzei Shabbos miyad. When we call malkam yesh lahachmer bechol isurei Torah kimo mevashel. But then says the Chai Adam, you should be machmer, and even if it's not to the item itself, you should still not use it until after Shabbat. So even though he says, according to Chai Adam mikar din, it's mutar. If it's b'shogeg, you should be machmer. Okay, that's a big chiddush. So says the Orchot Shabbat. Here's his case. So you have an object. Shehu b'ayidei Yisrael ayidei nehiga berekev. It was brought driving. Yesh b'zeh kinas d'maaseh Shabbat. The Orchot Shabbat is not holding this as Chayei Adam. He's saying the kanas is still there. I don't care if you're just driving, you didn't do anything to the box of cookies. But Maaseh, the driving is an isur. Okay, so he says. So he's not saying he's saying it. He's saying Maaseh Shabbat is even if there was no transformation to that item.
Right.
You did a malacha, whether you transformed the item or not, it's still considered Maaseh Shabbat. That's the Orchot Shabbat. Menuhat Ahava, he says, this is Rabbi Moshe Levi, and he says as follows: Yisrael sha'asa b'Shabbat afil davar she'asur la'asato b'Shabbat min haTorah. Aval hishtane guf hadavar machmas hamalacha shena'asit bo. But it didn't change the malacha didn't change the item. Kigon shehotzi peris mirshus hayachal mirshus harabim olehefach. Im asa iser b'shogeg muter loy lehanoit me'oita davar afilu b'Shabbos. Like the Chai Adam. If what I didn't change that item, is done b'shogeg, I can use it on Shabbat. If asa iser b'mezid, aser b'bein loy bein the Yisrael achel lehanoit me'oita davar ad motzei Shabbos. Then you have to wait to motzei Shabbat. So here you have Machoket, how to say, but Maaseh Shabbat, does it apply only if there's a transformation to the item? Or also if there's a transformation, if there's no transformation to the item, and just Malacha was done with it. So before we move on, I would like to take a look in the Al Joseph that we have in front of us outside of the Tzurba for a moment. So here I'm going to turn to page 291 in this English edition, Yalkut Yosef, and he has a case as follows. The soldiers are out in the fields, right? They're protecting Klal Yisrael, and they're delivering to them food on Shabbat. They didn't prepare it beforehand. They didn't send them the Shabbos kit beforehand. And now on Shabbat, no, that's the mistake in the earlier one. Yeah, it should be purple. And they bring the convoys of trucks come on Shabbat to deliver food to the soldiers on Shabbat. That's the question Yalkut Yosef dealing with. And he says over here, right, they're delivering the food.
But usually in the Israeli army, they don't do that. In Shabbat, no.
Some poskim rule that's permitted, since it's a mitzvah to eat on Shabbat. Also, the soldiers delivering the food probably does not realize that he is performing forbidden act. He may think the soldiers in the field must be given food to eat, since they'll become weak and not fully alert, place themselves and others in mortal danger. Therefore, his act of delivery is a shogeg. All right?
That's hard. The army is
The army, they don't.
No. Sometimes
He writes here the army chaplains must insist that Shabbat meals must be delivered before Shabbat. But if they did, you have this thing here. You have this Maaseh Shabbat is not on the item, but rather it's on the truck, right? There was some sort of delay. Okay.
If it's a war, everything is different. Everything is changed.
Okay.
But if it's
So
a regular
let's go to the
family,
Kiddush.
it's not.
Let's go to the Kiddush. Here's the Kiddush one. All right. Some poskim ruled that the Knas by our sages bringing us the benefit of the act of Shabbat applies only to acts that affected a change in the item. Cooking changes the food, right? Kindling a lamp creates light. If an act of Shabbat desecration does not change anything from what it was, they rule that you can benefit from it. Therefore, here's the case. This person is making Kiddush in the shul, and a non-observant Jew delivers the cookies and cakes to the shul on Shabbat by the car for the celebration of a bar mitzvah of a new groom. So you have this machoket here. He didn't do anything to the cake or cookies, but he brought it on his car. Use it or not.
What we said already before, we don't do it.
So we have here a machoket. Adam or not.
It's a kind of a knas.
So he writes as follows. The God-fearing people, Yireh Shamayim, should refrain from enjoying those snacks, even though they're 100% kosher. Right. If the rabbi knows that his congregation is God-fearing group, and he knows that the people are going to listen to him if he says halakha is halakha, then he should announce that it's forbidden. But if the rabbi knows the people are not going to listen to him, and that such an announcement will create an uproar, what do you mean? We have a kiddush, there's a simcha. What are you trying to mar the simcha? You're not letting it go through. What type of rabbi are you? Right? So then, he must remain silent. He may allow the congregation to rely on those who permit one to benefit from this act of Shabbos desecration, since no change to the snacks was affected by transporting them. He says, although, even that's true, if the rabbi wishes nevertheless to make a point by protesting this Shabbos desecration, there is basis to justify such an action. Each rabbi must make his own choice in each situation to decide what will best sanctify Hashem's name. You have to know your cry, you know if they'll listen, and even if they don't listen, you have to know if you still have to make that machoy, you still put in that protest. Like you really have to show something or not. So, we want to be in Shamayim, and we try not to go with this Hayeh Adam. It's Maaseh Shabbat, even though it's not on the item itself. You know, the Ikar Adin, Yalkut Yosef seems to say that it's okay, but Yireh Shamayim should not use those items. That's what he's saying.
Bring in something, deliver something.
Goyim, so if they could have done it without the car and they decide to choose the car, that's okay. Right? That's fine.
What if you thought there was a Goyish company and they had a not religious Jewish worker?
Oh, so now you have Maaseh Shabbat issue. Yeah. You have a non-observant Jew, right?
But you weren't looking for a Jew to do it, you just
Okay, so here's another example now, Rabotai. What about the case of borer. Right? What's borer? Separating one from the other. It's supposed to take what I want to eat from what I don't want to eat and for right away and with my hand. But let's say I didn't do that. I took what I don't want to eat. Or I took for what I want to eat, but I took it for later. Can I still enjoy it? Meaning, very good. The same machloket. Is the Maaseh Shabbat transformative? Or it just happens to be a malacha that didn't transform the item? How do you view borer?
This is, I think it's already maybe borer is a very, very hard thing to determine, and maybe it's xera, and maybe it will be mutar.
So take a look at the Bir Halacha. He says, I am a prima godim. Shekasa the avad in birer yesh lamed the aser loiser Shabbos. Then head of a meleches Shabbos, because he's benefit from malacha of Shabbos. If it did borer incorrectly, you can't eat it because you're enjoying from malacha of Shabbos, which seems to see it is a Maaseh Shabbat. So the Orchot Shabbat says you could fix it, you put it back in. We'll see. According to some, you could fix it by putting it back in, remixing it. But 1 second. Said the Orchot Shabbat, Misha Avar Obir B'Shabbos or Oifen Iser, Yesh Bazeh Dine Maaseh Shabbat Lechol Hadeot. But after that, the poskim hasovim she'eni sur Maaseh Shabbat malachat hotza'ah. V'hatam, what's the reason? Meshum sheha'oichel she'mu'ureh b'buseles haya nechshav mekulkal machmasah. It's considered not ready yet, the food, when it's all mixed up. When you're fixing it out, you're taking it on duber, you did tikkun to the food, right? You can't eat it till after Motzei Shabbos. So, according to the Bir Halacha, the Pri Megadim, and the Orchot Shabbat, they view borer as transformative. It does a tikkun. It did something to that item, and therefore, according to Kol Deot, you will not be able to eat it on that day. Now,
so the borer was done in a pot from a pot of food. The whole pot is no good now.
they
Somebody separated, pistola,
Learn the whole thing.
something unwanted from
Right.
a pot.
let's take 1 second to read the Yalkut Yosef, and then we're going to go
the
back.
Whole thing.
All right, the Yalkut Yosef says, "Haborer b'Shabbos b'Isur." Right, someone did borer on Shabbat b'Isur. V'chagon sha'avar uvirer ochel mitoch posel amanat lehaniach. He separated good from bad the way he's supposed to, but he did it for later. O shibirer posel mitoch ochel alter, or if he separated the non-good from the good for right now. Yesh omrim shidino kidin hamavashel b'Shabbat. It's like bishul, right? She'im asa ken b'shogeg asur le'echol et ma shibirer bo bayom. V'le'erev mutar le'echolo miyad antit Shabbat. You can't eat it the entire day. What you separated. V'im asa ken b'mezid asur le'olam. V'lachem mutar motzei Shabbat miyad. All right, that's the way the Orchot Shabbat. That's the way the Pri Megadim, the Bir Halacha says. V'yesh katvu says the Chamuvad. It says the Yalkut Yosef. V'yesh katvu lechalek ben isur borer leisur bishul. No. Borer and bishul are not the same. Why? The borer me'achar shelo naaseh shinui beguf hadavar ein domeh lemasher b'Shabbat. Sheguf hadavar nishtena mekamot sheyeh. It was different when you do bishul, not by borer. Ve'od sharei haya yochel. Also, you could have done it right way. There's no way to do bishul correctly on Shabbat. There is a right way to do borer on Shabbat, so it can be compared. And it can bishul b'chama, right? Unless you cooked in the sun directly, which is not the way of cooking. It's ein le'isur. You're not answering it. Says the Yalkut Yosef. It could be mekel b'zeh. Shema'acher ve'isur hana'am ma'aseh Shabbat umud Rabbanan. Smichan shover al siras ha'omrim she'ein isur zeh v'meleches borer. And then he writes, u'beprat im chazer v'irev et ha'posel etocha ochel. And better yet, go ahead and put back what you separated. Put it back in the mixture, right? She'az kevar eino nehena v'ma'aseh abreda. So now you're not benefiting from your separation. So now it's going to be okay. Okay, so Yaakov Yosef says, throw it back in. But you should also know, he says, Mikar Hadin, like the Hayy Adam, Maaseh Shabbat is only if you transform it, and there's no transformation over here, and therefore it would be okay if it was done b'shogeg. Right? That's what they want to bring out from this point. So Lamar said there is a back and forth over here. Do you view it and do it or not? We saw the Yaakov Yosef in other places. It says he wants Yish Shamayim to take Maaseh Shabbat even on something that's not transformative, but at the same point, he's also saying Mikar Adin, Maaseh Shabbat is only something that actually is transformative. Let's just take really quick. He has over here. Hold on one second, Abotay. He has over here some interesting cases. All right. Here's the case. The guy bought a candy from a vending machine on Shabbat.
With money?
With money.
With money. Okay.
So he put money into the vending machine. He did a malacha. Some sort of malacha happened over there. There's lights. There's different stuff. There's money. There's stuff going on. And the candy falls out now. Now the candy, there's no transformation done to the candy. Can I have the chocolate bar? Can I have that? It's totally in this machlekes, right? Totally in this machlekes. Is it Maaseh Shabbat or not? When there's no transformation to that.
This is a Maaseh Shabbat b'Isur. Shabbat b'Isur.
No, I did it b'shoigig. I didn't know. I forgot it was Shabbos, or I forgot that it was also to buy from a vending machine. I don't know. And now I did it b'shoigig. Now it comes out, but there's no transformation to the chocolate bar, so it's totally in this machlekes. Yeah, he writes over here that preferably not to be used. Yeel Shemayim will not use it because even though we say Mikar Adin, there's only Maaseh Shabbat, something that's transformative, yet and any malachat you should stay away from. Okay. Ooh, same thing with opening a fridge door. Open the fridge door, the light went on, right? He may benefit from the food that's within the fridge since the actual halacha that was done did not affect the food in any way. And so many more ideas he brings over here regarding this. Okay, let's move on to now. He's going to come into some contemporary cases, and I think one of them was just happened over Shabbat in Eretz Yisrael. One of the towns, the electricity went out, and then it comes back on Shabbat. How does it come back on Shabbat? And most likely they are Jewish.
They're doing probably for tibur that really need to people.
Okay, so Isaac's right away being mad to the whole story. Okay, let's take a look at the Chazon Ish. So you know that many Bnei Brak have a private generator for Shabbat and Yom Tov, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to rely on the government's electricity.
I don't know if it's many, but some people.
Well, those who hold like the Chazon Ish will have, because look at the Chazon Ish says. Take a look at source 42.
You're gonna hear, I'm not sure if you go to Shabbat, you're gonna hear like an engine, like a.
Oh, someone has a private generator?
Loud. The corner house, right next to the Aguda. The whole Bnei Brak.
No, but he's good. He's the good.
Oh, yes. Okay.
He's not having it for a good reason.
I thought it was a Yid that had it. No. Okay.
No, I'm saying it's gonna be probably very loud the whole Shabbat. They're gonna hear generators.
Okay. If electricity was produced in a power plant by a Jew who is not Shabbat observant, it's forbidden to benefit from it. Even in a situation in which halacha technically permits, right? Such as the cholim, it is still forbidden, since its use constitutes a desecration of Hashem's name, right? That's what the Chazon Ish says, and because of that, many who hold like the Chazon Ish have their own private generator. This way, they're not having a guy, not having a Jew working on the power plant, the electricity plant on Shabbat. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is quoted in the Shemirat Shabbat Kilchata like Isaac said. What did he say? Or shahudlik v'shabbos shvil ha'choyle shebesakana mutar l'chol adam line up mimenu shekei ner le'echad ner le'mea. Kloimer oita ha'or shehudlak l'choila echad one of them toid gam le'mea. The ain siba l'chshay sheyosef or lehem.
They're primarily working for them.
So now look at this. Look in the arrow on the bottom. Nearly l'chayr. When you have a stoppage, right, and then the techneim Yehudim, so the technicians, Jews, metakenim et akilkul, they come and they fix it up. The mutar lehenot men hameor, you're allowed to enjoy from it. The kivin shebizman shemetakenim, when they fix it, metakenim gam avor hacholah sheyesh boy sakana shebeir. Guess what? The electricity that goes out in the city affects the hospital too. It affects other people in the building who are sick or who need it. The efshal itaken et mitaken rak aburam. You can't just fix it for that one guy who's on the ventilator. You got to fix everybody. And therefore, you're on the grid. So therefore, everyone can use it because it's fixed for a mutter dekar reason. That's what Shlomo Zalman Aruch says. So you have the electricity. By the way, here we're talking about that goes out and then comes back on. According to Chazon Ish, even if it's stayed on from before Shabbat, he holds that they're always coming and fixing it. That part of the way to run a power plant, there's always technicians coming and doing things. So even if it started from before, and the Chazon Ish says you can't use it.
On the field, but in the power plant,
There's something going on. Some technicians, the Chazon Ish says it's always also to use, even if it started from. Most other poskim say no. From it started from before, it's already going and has nothing to do with anybody, and it's just happening. You can just continue to use it.
Some people that are
So that's what Shlomo Zalman Aruch is saying. So he's saying, so Shlomo says that even if the issue went out and they're actually now physically going and putting it on, you can still use it. Why? Because you're doing it for people who have a sakana, who need to be on a ventilator, who need to be on other things. Therefore, they're on it, and therefore it's going to be permissible even if it goes back on. And this, by the way, is all primary in Eretz Yisrael, where many technicians are Jewish.
Is it the only electricity issue? What about like natural gas? No, that doesn't require constant fixing.
What malach is going on with the gas?
I don't know. There's probably somebody in the gas company that is doing, I don't know, monitoring different things.
I don't know.
Everybody does electricity.
Well, remember, the Chazon Ish also holds that all electricity is d'oraita, even if it's not an incandescent bulb. And he holds the whole current is an old d'oraita issue. Right? I'm talking Kaylee, it's this, it's that. He just brought like 3 reasons why it's old d'oraita. So by gas, you don't have that. Chazon Ish didn't go on the flow of gas, on the flow of water. But you're right. You're saying if there's something there, the technicians and stuff like that. I hear you. Anything that's delivered to the home technically has people working on it.
Everything's electronic. In the water plant, they probably have
They're
filtering this.
Right. So let's move a little further. We're running out of time. The Pnei Halacha says, you should know, first of all, he tells us, remember, Melamed says that, first of all, the Metzias has changed from the time of the Chazon Ish. Now, the Israeli power companies, the IEC, Israel Electric Corporation, they put into it stuff that halachically allow you to continue to use electricity. Whatever the Chazon Ish was worried about from before, they need all the technicians to come in, they made the system more automated, that it's requiring less and less technicians. So therefore, electricity from before Shabbat that continues should be okay. And Melamed says, even for the Chazon Ish, because whatever was the Metzias then is not the Metzias now. That's one thing that he wants to say. Now, if it goes out, he says, the only real issue is if it goes out for a small area. And now they're putting it back on. Okay? So it's not for the whole city. It doesn't include the hospital. It just went out on one block. And on that block, no one's on a ventilator. On that block, no one has any electricity. Or if it goes out for one house. Right? Or if it goes out for 1 or 2 houses and there's no one there. And now they're putting it back on. That's going to be your problem. That's going to be your problem. Because over there is no Bavor Chol Zagara. You don't have any of that. If it was nevertheless repaired by Jews on Shabbat, one may not benefit from the electricity until an hour after Shabbat, says the Penine Halacha.
You never know. There might be somebody sick in one of the houses.
Okay, so usually apartment buildings you can say that. You can tie on that in an apartment building. There's a lot of people there. You don't know everybody who's in there and stuff like that.
You never know who's there.
You don't. You don't. So if there's enough of a reason to say yeah, I would assume you can say yeah. But if you not enough of a reason to say yeah, then you would have to be worried about it. Let's take a look 1 second out over here. So it says the Yalkut Yosef. Today there are people in Eretz Yisrael who don't use public electricity on Shabbat because Jewish workers in the generating plant desecrate Shabbat to produce electricity, and therefore they use a private generator. Even so, many people are lenient. The reason for this leniency is the electric company must produce electricity in Shabbat for the sake of sick people. Okay? Therefore, it's okay to use it. And then he says, he makes an interesting halacha next. He says, what happens if a man wants to be machmer and have his own private generator, but his wife doesn't want it, right? It's too noisy, too much hassle. She says no, right? Can he keep his chumrah of having a private generator or not? This is interesting. Shalom Bay's question brings over here. He says, no, you're not allowed this issue to interfere with Shalom Bayit. And if he wants, he has to convince his wife. Otherwise, he can't do it. Okay? So that they can't do it. That's what he writes them here in the Yalkut Yosef, unless he convinces her. Okay. Then he writes over here. What do we do? It's 20. Yeah, okay. All right. So if it goes back on and there's food for circuit breakers, so just the house, right? And the food's not yet cooked, and then turns it back on, you have to make sure the food not staying on the place, because otherwise you can be cooking on Shabbat. You have to pay attention to that, he says. Next, he says, right, so he writes over here, if it occurred over a large neighborhood, then you can assume there are most likely some people who are sick. And if it goes back on, then it's allowed for everybody. But if you cannot assume that, then you can't. You know what I mean? It has to be large enough that you can fairly assume someone here needs that electricity because they're father that has a sakana. If you don't have that assumption, yeah. If you can't have that assumption, then I don't know. Like I guess you say, I guess a block or two is enough to say that.
When it's in the sakana, you cannot.
Well, if you're saying it's a deraisa, then you can't, right? Only for anybody sakana, you only do derabanans.
Going to do, but if the guy doesn't have electricity, they can run the machine or whatever. I guess.
Yeah. So this is all primarily in Eretz Yisrael. For us, it'll be a little different because it's all done by mostly. I mean, assume it's done by Goyim. I can assume that safely. A little different. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the next case. Buying food from stores that operates on Shabbat. So we already saw this idea, right? As long as there's a suffix, if it was made on Shabbat or not, you can buy it. Otherwise, you should make a protest to stop it. He brings about milk. Right? There are some dairy farms that are milking their cows on Shabbat. And they also have a certificate of kashrut from the Rabbanut. So, Maaseh Shabbat. So, how do they have that? Now he writes, if you turn to page 258, he gives 3 reasons why to be Meiko. Dairies that do not have a Mahadran Super receive regular kashrut certification for the milk they produce throughout the week, so the consumer does not know whether the milk in the package before him was milked on Shabbat. Meaning, it's a suffix. I don't know if it's from Shabbat or not. So as long as I don't know if it's Shabbat, it's okay. Even the milk was milked on Shabbat. There's no certainty that it was done in a prohibited manner, right? Maybe they employed non-Jewish workers. Maybe there was no Maaseh Shabbat. And if the Shabbat milk was milked with milk from weekdays, maybe they did bittul, right? No, maybe a bittul happened. So he wants to give reasons to allow dairy farms that milk on Shabbat a rabbanut kashrut. Why it would be okay? We probably would want to go for the mahadran milk. Okay, jump for the mahadran milk. Okay, the next case if a Jew enters a stairwell and a light is then put on by someone who does not observe Shabbat. In Eretz Yisrael, they have like well, he writes it over here. I don't remember how it was where I was. But he says they put it on, and then after a few minutes, it goes back off. So the guy puts it on, a non-observant Jew, Chilon puts it on, and now I can see better. Can I walk in that stairwell? Or do I have to close my eyes? Or have to wait for the light to go off? It's Maaseh Shabbat. So he writes over here, if there was some dim light that I could see my way around, now it makes it a little bit better. I can walk there. I don't have to close my eyes or anything like that because there already was light before. It's just a hosafa, so I'm not really getting anything from it. The next case he brings here, what about on Motzei Shabbat? The Israeli bus company is sending buses out, Jewish drivers. The guy wants to get to his route on time, so he leaves before Motzei Shabbat, and he starts his bus route. So how can I go on that bus now?
The bus driver.
The bus driver headed out before Shabbat was over to start his route. It's like you have sometimes those so-called kosher bakeries that start baking for after Pesach on Pesach still because they want to make sure to meet the crowd's demands, right? So this guy wants to make it to the bus stop on time, so he leaves before Shabbat's over. So in the Orchot Shabbat, he says, one must not travel on a bus driven by a Jew who desecrates Shabbat when it departed on Shabbat, even if it only came after Shabbat. This is considered produced to the malacha on Shabbat, which one may not purchase even on a weekday. It's asur lo le'olam, because he's doing it for you, and it's for commercial reasons. It's kviyas. Says Orchot Shabbat, you can never go on that bus. Motzei Shabbat, you can't go on the bus if you know he started it from beforehand. In the Alkut Yosef, he says a little bit different. He says it's technically, in the Alkut Yosef, not the Orchot Shabbat says no. Alkut Yosef is technically permissible to board that bus immediately after Shabbat. Why? Because I'm benefiting indirectly from an act of Shabbat desecration. It's not considered benefiting from the act of driving on Shabbat. Nevertheless, one who's strict in this manner gets a bracha, especially if it's in a Torah community. You should not get on the bus. You know, this way you make a protest and they won't be leaving before Shabbat. Okay, we already saw this before. Actually, this is a little bit about turning on a light, air conditioner, other stuff in the house. So, do you have to leave your house? If someone did Maaseh Shabbat and put something on, put on the air conditioner, put on this, you put on that. So he writes over here, you don't have to leave the house, but try not to enjoy what was put on, right? Especially if it's a hosafa. Try not to enjoy it. I'm sitting in the room, someone turn on the air conditioner. Someone turn on the air conditioner. You knew it was Shabbat, knew everything. Really not allowed to benefit from after Shabbat. So he says, don't benefit from it, and you don't have to leave the room. Someone turned on a radio, music player. Same thing. You don't have to leave the room, but you should not be paying attention to it. You shouldn't have any benefit from it. Yeah. Right? So don't have any benefit from it, and you can stay there. All right, the next case on page 260 is dealing with automatic doors and electronic keys. Okay, so automatic doors, we already saw before. We want to say that automatic door removes an obstacle, and it's considered an indirect benefit. So even though a person did it b'mezid, there are poskim who say it's okay to walk through it because it's not a direct benefit, but rather it's a removal of an obstacle. There was a line there, it took it away. Our poskim would disagree with that, but Maaseh, one can rely on that. I don't want that door to be there, so now it's not there. I'm not gaining from the Maaseh Shabbat. I'm gaining from it not being there. That's the svara. That's the svara. Bringing a key, the isser, to open something is a problem as well. Dr. Moshe says that they brought a key, like to open a shul. They brought it from outside the tchum. They brought it on a card. They brought something like that. He says, you really shouldn't open the shul with that key. If they opened it, then you should close it and then reopen it, so you're not actually having enough from the actual Maaseh Shabbos stuff to do there. It's problematic. And the last topic is recording pictures and videos taken on Shabbat. This is the idea of, and the real question that came, you see Rabbi Rimon was asked this question after the hostages were starting to be released. They were all being released when? on Shabbat. And a lot of the videos were taken by Jews on Shabbat. So you have Maaseh Shabbat. The Jew did something Maaseh Shabbat. It is Asur till after Shabbat, right? Now, if he's if you hold that he has to, if you hold that there's a mumar Shabbat, to Michal Shabbat for Hesia, which compared to Avodah Zarah, then you have to wait B'chtei Shi'asu. And if you wait B'chtei Shi'asu, there's no way to do this on Motzei Shabbat. B'chtei Shi'asu means, however long it'll take me to do on Shabbat, you have to wait that time, Motzei Shabbat. But guess what? There's no way to do what you did on Shabbat, on Motzei Shabbat, to take a video that can only be taken on Shabbat. You cannot take that video later. So there is no B'chtei Shi'asu. So maybe B'chtei Shi'asu is forever. And that's what some say. You can never watch that video. If a video is taken by a Jew on Shabbat, you can never watch that video. You can never see that picture if it was taken by a Jew. There's someone want to say that. Ramon says, I don't know if to get into that, he says, because maybe again we said B'chtei Shi'asu only applies by a guy and never by a Jew. That's a special class by Mir La'akum that does never apply to a Jew, so you have that. And then he wants to say other reasons to be makel. In the end of the day, he says if it gives a person, especially the hostage situation, if it gives a person a special boost of emunah, bitachon, and gives him a good feeling and it makes him closer to Hashem, then he has what to rely on to these kulos of watching those videos. But even Rabbi Ramon says that, truthfully speaking, it's probably better never to watch those videos if you know that they were filmed by a Jew, because it's Maaseh Shabbat and it's Asur L'Olam. What they bring?
They bring clip of what happened over Shabbat.
Jews.
Yeah, they bring.
It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem.
Where they take it from?
It's a problem.
Maybe not.
And look, Orchat Shabbat says Asur L'Olam. Asur L'Olam. Even Rabbi Yimon says really Asur L'Olam. Maybe B'chtei Shi'asu, but there really is no B'chtei Shi'asu here because it can't possible to do it. And he says, okay, maybe there's no B'chtei Shi'asu, maybe this, maybe that, and there's ways to be makel. But if you have Yerusha Shemayim and you know that it was filmed by a Jew on Shabbat, you should stay away from it.
The summary of what happened on Shabbat, and then they tell you all the stories.
He's telling you. He's reporting to you. He's showing you videos also.
Maybe the cameraman was a goy. Maybe the cameraman was.
Okay, if you have what to rely on, you can say it was a guy and other stuff like that. Fine. Yeah, there is room to be makel, but Yerusha Shemayim, knowing that this thing was from Shabbat, would definitely stay away from it. Okay, we finished the Maaseh Shabbat. There's plenty more to learn over there, but we finished it in the Tzurba. And Be'ezrat Hashem, the next time we learn, we're going into a new world of Hilchot Shabbat, which is the Malacha of Hotza'ah, and then Tikkun Eruvin, how to make Erevs, right? And then the shir after that continues with Hilchot Erevei Chetzeros and Erev Tachumin. So you have here the next couple of shirim, Hotza'ah and Erevs, and we'll see how things work. Be'ezrat Hashem, a lot of interesting things, the polls, the telephone lines, Tzurba Pesach, and the like. Okay. Shavua Tov, Kulam, Yashar Koach.